Hi, I'm Sarah Taylor. I'm an awakening trail guide and an intuitive energy healer. I'm also a late diagnosed ADHD woman, autistic and ADHD. And today I want to talk about autism and psychic abilities, ADHD and psychic abilities, basically being neurodivergent and having intuitive capacities. And I've been wanting to make this video for a while, and then the Telepathy Tapes came out, and it seems everybody's talking about the Telepathy Tapes. So I don't know, have you heard the Telepathy Tapes? It's a podcast created by Kai Dickens where she interviews the parents and nonverbal autistic kids about their telepathic capacities. And it goes beyond telepathy. But I can't even say it. It goes beyond telepathy, which is mind-to-mind communication, right? Nonverbal communication, where you know what somebody's thinking, you know what they're going to say. For me, it brought up a lot of old memories of knowing what my mom was going to say. I was not nonverbal as a child. I sort of created my own language for the first few years, and then, I've been talking ever since, and you can't shut me up. But I knew what my mom was thinking. It wasn't really discussed, but often she would start to say something and I would say it along with her, right at her, because I knew exactly what she was going to say. And she'd say, "Stop it." And right at the same time, I'd be going, "Stop it." And it drove her nuts. And I eventually learned to not do it because it kind of freaked her out. But the podcast brings forward the possibility that this isn't just a neurodivergent thing. This isn't just autistic, nonverbal kids, but it's just consciousness. It's just us as human beings having this capacity. And some people come in more porous and more open than others. But I really want to say that, I think it is our inherent nature to awaken to our spirit, to our untethered sense of being that isn't separate from others. And it is our inherent nature to be connected with our instinctual and intuitive capacities. So lots of people are talking about this podcast because it opens up the possibility of what is consciousness, and does it have limits, and do we all share one consciousness? They're interesting questions to raise. So one of the things that I feel strongly about is that, we keep stuff in the shadow, right? You've heard people talking about shadow work, right? That's really just anything that we've suppressed and repressed. And so we could say that our true enlightened nature as human beings has been in the shadows, right? And as we begin to meditate and do spiritual practices and begin to awaken to our true nature and start to have spiritual awakenings, our true nature, our spirit, has come forth from the shadows. We've liberated it from the shadows, right? And so too, our intuitive abilities can be in the shadows. Now, when you are a high masking or low support needs autistic person or ADHD individual or ADHD like me, you learn masking strategies. And masking is just certain behaviors and ways of viewing yourself and life and relationships in a way so that you'll be safe and you'll fit in and you won't stand out as weird or different. And so masking can look a lot of different ways, and there are some great creators out there who talk about the different ways that we can mask. But I would say that hiding and suppressing our intuitive abilities is a form of masking. And so what happens with spiritual awakening, with an authentic spiritual awakening, is that these egoic, separate self structures that used to make us so individuated and separate from everybody and each in our own little boxes falls away. And we sense into or realize our interconnectedness. and that we're not the self we thought we were. We're not this, congealed blob of, messages that society gave us and our parents and things we believe and, identities that we cling to. We're ultimately none of those things. We are great spacious awareness. We're pure consciousness, right? We're God, we're source, we're Brahman, whatever you want to call it, however you want to say it. And so when there is an authentic awakening, conditioning falls away. So not just identity structures, but these structures that have kept us safe when we're relating to others and when we're out and about doing our life, they begin to fall away. We start to become more authentic. So for a neurodivergent person, there's like a double layer of masking there. And so that's why I always point out that like awakening can be quite jarring for a neurodivergent person, because not only are the self structures and the behaviors and the conditionings falling away, but this like extra layer of protection that has been kind of built up over time falls away, and our hypersensitivities just are completely exposed. We're so porous, and so the integration and the assimilation process after an awakening for a neurodivergent person can be intense. But I want to suggest that we reclaim our power and reclaim these intuitive abilities that have been in the shadows, I mean, when I was little and listening to the telepathy tapes, it brought back a lot of memories about how I was like the first 5 years of my life, because I remember kind of really starting to shut down around 5.5, 6 years old. I mean, I was so porous. I was so open. I knew what people were thinking in my house. I could hear their thoughts. I could read them. I knew what was going on. I knew way more than like a 4-year-old should know, or a 5-year-old, right? Or a 6-year-old. And there's a lot of trouble in my home growing up. It wasn't like the easiest place to grow up. And I used to drive my mom crazy with this little thing that I would do where I knew what she was going to say before she was going to say it. And so she would open her mouth and start talking, and I would talk right along with her. And she'd be saying, "Stop it, Sarah, you're driving me crazy." I was, "Stop it, Sarah, you're driving," like right at the same time. I would just open my mouth and channel what she was saying. I thought it was kind of cool, and it made me feel connected to her. And it probably was a way of, I think, wanting to connect more deeply and wanting to communicate more fully. But these nonverbal kids in the Telepathy Tapes, great podcast by Kai Dickens, you're meeting these incredible kids who they've had to strengthen their telepathic, their intuitive, their psychic gifts because they're nonverbal, and that's how they're communicating with their caregivers, with their parents, mostly their moms. And I love how one of the girls in it said, "Well, you have to believe in us. If somebody doesn't believe in me, it doesn't flow as well. Or if somebody is skeptical and closed off, she would get closed off." She was doing a test with like her dad, I guess, and she couldn't read his mind. But when her mom was there, because her mom was so open and they were so connected and believed that her daughter really had these gifts, it was like flowing. And so I think something happens to neurodivergent kids where like we're told to be different, and so we're not believed in, basically. Like the things that we're seeing and sensing and knowing isn't taken seriously, so we start to shut down, and that's a form of masking, And so it freaked my mom out. I knew what everybody in the house was thinking and feeling. I could feel it. It was like I was being bombarded with everybody's energies and emotions, and I couldn't figure it out. I just remembered, I could mimic people's accents really easily. Anyway, I don't want to go on and on about the stuff that I did as a kid, but listening to the telepathy tapes, I was like, oh, wow. I freaked my family out a bit, and I remember really scaring my mom with some of the stuff I'd know or I'd say, or I just remember being like 4 and sitting down and playing a song on the piano with both of my hands, and I just knew what to do. But my dad played the piano, but I didn't have any lessons, and so it was like something was coming out of me, and I just looked up and saw a couple of faces in the living room just looking at me like horrified. Like, why do you know that? And just shut down. And then it's like, well, try it again the next day. And it's like, no, So for any of us any human being to develop and embrace our natural intuitive capacities, our capacities to channel, to know, to sense, we have to be in a conducive environment, and it's understandable. Nobody, everybody's doing the best they can in life. And so we've learned how to mask. Autistic brain people have, set in motion these structures that keep society and keep relating going in certain ways. And everybody's just kind of playing along, right? So I feel like we should care about this because, we've lost our wildness, as my friend Ishtar says. And, psychic abilities or psychic phenomenon shows that we're interconnected. It's just the totality of this multidimensional reality we live in. And that's another thing. It illuminates and shows that we do live in a multidimensional reality. It's not flat. It's not static. Now, some spiritual paths will say, psychic abilities, or if psychic phenomena starts to open up, just don't get distracted. Just continue, inquiring into who you are at your core, and, piercing through phenomena of all kinds to realize emptiness, which is completely valid, right? But what happens for a lot of people, I know a lot of very deeply, abidingly awake people who are aware of various dimensions and realms and the various levels at which we can communicate with each other. And, we're in a multi-dimensional reality, really. It's not flat, it's not static. And we have access to these wisdom streams too, these lineages, these great spiritual lineages that maybe you're a part of, or maybe you're not, but you could have access to. I mean, some of these kids on the telepathy tapes, they can just tune in and know what a book is about, or gain knowledge about something. And I had a bit of that too. I would look at a book, like a textbook or something, when I was really under the age of like 7 or 6, and just suddenly like be flooded with, if it was a fiction or something, like the characters and everything, and kind of like all the information was there. So that's a type of channeling, which again, I just think that we're all channels, really. So I think we should care about the implications of intuitive capacities and psychic phenomenon because of the questions it poses about reality. So as neurodivergent people, I just, want to encourage you to make reclaiming your intuitive capacities part of your unmasking. Now, what does that mean? How can you do it? Well, go gentle with yourself. You're already so porous and open. And if you've had a spiritual awakening, you're really porous and open. But you can do stream of consciousness writing. That's really helpful. To just write whatever is coming to mind without stopping. You can take a writing prompt or something. The thing I really want to say is, and go. It sort of empties out conditioning, and then also some wisdom can start to come through as well. I always recommend, like, before you do any type of, creative or psychic practice, to drop into presence, to access presence, stillness. Drop the need to know anything, drop the need to figure anything out, and just be still. and empty out. Empty out as best you can. And then do your stream of consciousness writing. You can also have fun with psychometry. That's where you pick up an object and you hold it and you let it tell you, you tune into what information is held in that object. And that could be somebody's watch. It's like a loved one's beloved object. And just see what kind of information you get from it. Because often as neurodivergent people, when we're in the presence of another person, we're basically getting their life story energetically and emotionally, psychically, when we're standing there with them or around them. We may not realize it, but I mean, that's, many people report that. It's not necessarily a psychic thing. It's just, it is, right? Like, where's the line drawn, right? But you know what that's like to be overstimulated, oversaturated, and overwhelmed by a lot of stimuli coming from being in the presence of someone. So just take an object of theirs on your own when you're by yourself and just get some sort of information from it and write it down. Have fun with it. Take it nice and easy. And, trust your gut about situations. That's another way you can strengthen your intuitive capacities. We've been taught as neurodivergent people, we've gaslit ourselves, basically. That can't be, well, I'm imagining this, or I'm thinking this, or I'm feeling this about something. Well, I'm probably making it up. I'm too sensitive. That's not what they meant. The list goes on, right? So we've learned how to not trust our instincts. Or maybe you have learned to trust your instincts over time as a late realized autistic or ADHD person. Good for you. I know that I really, really doubted myself. Especially because I was a mystical, intuitive kid. I was talking to like these balls of light and these beings, like when I was young, like before the age of 5. I remember standing in front of a church and these orbs of light, like talking to me like they were my friends. I remember being in my own world and imaginary friends. How many of you have had imaginary friends? Are they that imaginary? What does that mean for them to live in the imaginal realm? Does that mean they're not actually there? So anyway, you get what I'm saying. So I'm curious if there's been some masking for you with your intuitive capacities. Because I know I learned that my intuition, my intuitive abilities, let's just say, freaked people out, scared people. And I didn't want to scare anybody. When you're a young child and you see that you're scaring people, like just being yourself is scaring your family and scaring friends, that's you learn pretty quickly to shut down. So I want to encourage you to find safe spaces in which you can be yourself and find like-spirited people with whom you can explore unmasking in general, which includes, maybe developing your intuitive capacities, and rewild yourself. Become the intuitive, multidimensional being that you're meant to be. So I would love to hear from you in the comments. Did you have intuitive capacities as a kid? Did it freak people out? Did it freak you out? Have you been reclaiming them? Has it been part of your unmasking journey? If you're going through an awakening, have you found that your intuitive abilities have opened up more? I know mine did. All that shutting down, and then with the first part of the awakening, it just went and completely opened up. And so I'd like to hear from you. So hit the bell to be alerted for future videos, and please subscribe and let me know in the comments how you're doing. Thanks for being here.